The Viking Age began in 793 AD with the raid on Lindisfarne. It lasted nearly 300 years. What drove it wasn't just greed. It was land hunger, overpopulation in Scandinavia, and a warrior culture that rewarded men who took risks. The fighters in this chapter were the most feared of their age, not because they were reckless, but because they were organized. When the Great Heathen Army arrived in England in 865, it wasn't a mob. It had commanders, objectives, and a plan. These men built reputations that survived 1,000 years. Some of them are still household names. Others were nearly forgotten until historians dug their stories back up. Ireland, Scotland, England, France, the Mediterranean. Norse warriors showed up everywhere, not as visitors, as a force that couldn't be ignored. Hell closes this chapter. The Norse didn't need a devil. How you died determined where you ended up, and she was the one in charge of everyone who didn't fall in battle. At some point, the raid stopped being enough. Viking leaders wanted something more permanent. They wanted kingdoms. That shift defines this chapter. These men weren't just warriors. They were rulers. They held courts, wrote laws, collected taxes, and fought other kings on equal terms. They converted entire countries to Christianity, sometimes by persuasion, sometimes by force. Scandinavia in the 9th and 10th centuries was a patchwork of small kingdoms, constantly at war. From that chaos, a handful of men built something lasting. Norway, Denmark, Sweden. The modern nations we know today emerged from this period. England was conquered by Vikings twice. The second time happened faster than anyone thought possible. It changed English history in ways that are still visible today. These weren't men who waited for power to come to them. They crossed seas, made alliances with people they'd once raided, and built empires across multiple countries at once. Heimdall ends this chapter. He was the gods' gatekeeper, the one who held the line between order and chaos. The same people who built the Great Heathen Army also discovered North America. That tells you everything about who the Norse were. This chapter is about the explorers, the ones who went west when everyone else stayed home. Iceland, Greenland, the coast of North America. Each step into the unknown was taken because someone was curious, desperate, or exiled. Often all three at once. Norse navigation was remarkable. No compass, no charts. They read stars, ocean currents, bird behavior, and cloud patterns to cross open ocean. They were doing this centuries before anyone else in Europe. These voyages happened long before the so-called Age of Discovery. The Norse didn't need a monument or a treaty. They just went. Rand closes this chapter. The sea gave the Norse everything they had. She was the reminder that it could take it all back. Norse women had more legal rights than women almost anywhere else in the medieval world. They could own property, initiate divorce, and inherit land. That context matters for this chapter. The women here weren't exceptions. They were products of a culture that gave women real agency. Some of them led expeditions, built settlements, and shaped the political future of entire kingdoms. The Shieldmaiden tradition sits on the border between history and legend. The Norse didn't always draw a clean line between the two. What matters is that women warriors existed in the stories Norse people told about themselves, which means they existed in how Norse people understood the world. These were not passive figures waiting on the sidelines. They made decisions, took risks, and left marks. Frigg closes the chapter. She was Odin's equal, not his shadow. She knew everything he knew. She just chose her words more carefully. Not everyone who shaped the Viking Age carried an axe. Some of them carried a pen. The skalds were poet-historians, keepers of a culture that didn't write things down until late. They memorized the deeds of kings and composed verse that spread news faster than any messenger. To have a skilled skald praise you was political currency. The lawmen were something else entirely. Iceland in particular developed a legal tradition that was remarkable for its time. No king, no central authority, just an annual assembly where disputes were settled by argument and law. The jarls in this chapter held real power, often more than kings. Some of them ran regions for decades, kept armies, and decided who sat on thrones. Bragi closes the chapter. Without the skalds, most of what we know about the Viking Age simply wouldn't exist. They were the ones who remembered. The Norse drew no clean line between history and myth. A hero from 300 years ago and a hero from the beginning of time occupied the same imaginative space. This chapter is where that becomes clear. The figures here come from the sagas, the great Norse stories written down in Iceland in the 12th and 13th centuries. Some of them may have been real people. Most are legendary. All of them were treated as real by the people who told these stories. The Völsunga saga is the Norse answer to the Iliad. It has a dragon, a cursed sword, a doomed love story, and a cycle of revenge that destroys everyone it touches. Its characters influenced Wagner, Tolkien, and 100 fantasy traditions that followed. The Jomsvikings were a real Viking brotherhood, a mercenary company with strict rules and a legendary reputation. Their story sits right on the edge between history and saga. The further back you look, the blurrier that line gets. These stories survived because people kept telling them. The Norse weren't only warriors and explorers, they were storytellers who tried to make sense of a violent world by giving it gods, heroes, and monsters. Baldur is the last card, the most beloved of all the gods. His death set in motion the end of the old world. That's where Norse mythology ultimately leads, not to victory, but to transformation. Everything ends. Something new begins,